gun show loophole is a major setback for regulating the sales of firearms. Current laws are a ruse due to the many issues within the legislation. Gun shows are very common in almost every state. For many, these events provide a unique experience to buy guns from private gun dealers. Currently, the superficial laws protecting the citizens of this country are not strong enough due to the lack of background checks at gun stores. The Brady Act enforces the use of background checks at gun stores and a waiting period following purchases. However, state and federal laws differ, resulting in the gun show loophole. Background checks are not required for some private transaction of weapons. Many of our state and federal gun laws are written in ways to make them ineffective and unenforceable. There are many problems with the system because these guns could be going into the hands of the deranged and mentally ill instead of legal firearm owners.
In many cases, the stratagem of domestic terrorists is to buy assault rifles and handguns from gun shows due to the simplicity and lack of regulation. To ensure safer gun regulation, the Brady Act needs to be changed or replaced. First, background checks should be used in every firearm purchase. Gun violence would decrease as a result. Next, firearm distributors should be licensed by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Federal regulation would strengthen the laws that are supposedly preventing criminals from surreptitiously buying guns. The Brady Act should also be revised to limit certain aspects of assault rifles. Magazine size should be lowered to deter the use of assault rifles for mass shootings. Semi-automatic rifles should also be limited to a low rate of fire, effectively limiting the deadly potential these guns have. To protect the public from mass shootings and gun violence, we need to increase gun regulation and background checks.
1 minute, 47 seconds. Rebuttal.
Okay, so government can't control the private interactions and selling of weapons. And I quote, even if Cho had been properly turned down during a background check from a gun dealer, he could have easily attended any of the dozens of gun shows that take place throughout Virginia each weekend and bought the same weapons from a private seller with no background check into his mental history and no questions asked.
Yeah, increased government regulation is not going to affect this sector of the gun interactions and gun sales. So even if the Brady Act is improved upon, like the waiting period already exists and regulations already exist to restrict the government sale of these guns, but then it just turns into a private sector.
And also the Columbine shooter, he got around the system by using guns bought at a gun show from an unlicensed seller. No paperwork, no questions asked. So if we can't stop these tragedies from happening, why are we stopping our main defense of guns?
1 minute. Point 4.
Gun control has recently grown increasingly debated throughout the United States. Stronger gun control would not be beneficial to the United States for many reasons. Primarily, gun control laws infringe upon the stratagem provided to self-defense and deny people a sense of safety. Statistics from the NRA state that guns are used in self-defense 2.5 million times per year. According to Source 2, 40% of criminals say they would not commit the crime if they believed their victim to be armed. In addition, criminals that attempted break-ins succeeded only 14% of the time when the homeowner was armed, compared to 33% of the time when the homeowners were armed. Being able to have a gun in your home is a right given to the citizens of the United States by the Second Amendment. This allows for citizens not to feel worried of their security and freedoms.
For many gun owners, it's a simple calculus. Having a gun gives them at least a fighting chance in the event that a burglar or home invader manages to get in. And while a definite number on the frequency of defensive gun use in the U.S. is hard to come by, they range from a low of 55,000 to a high of over 2 million per year. Criminals don't like finding themselves on the business end of a gun barrel any more than the rest of us do, which is why 74% of them actively try to avoid breaking into houses and try to surreptitiously sneak in when the owners are at home. In other words, just the fear of being shot is often enough to dissuade criminals from targeting certain homes. So why would we want to make the criminals less intimidated knowing that law-abiding citizens don't have anything to protect themselves with?
1 minute, 41 seconds. Rebuttal.
So if you guys are saying guns are supposed to provide self-defense and help people save their lives, why is it that America has the largest homicide rates in the world? I mean, guns aren't really doing anything for self-defense, and people who do have guns planning to use them for self-defense rarely ever either get they never can.
Yeah, the U.S. has some 270 million guns, more than countries with a fraction the homicide rate we do. And it's plain and common sense. We see it in the numbers that these guns are just not lowering the homicide rates. They're not being used for self-defense. And the plain and simple truth is that people who do own guns are more likely to fall victim to gun violence. It's in the statistics. It's in source F and H.
Okay, 57 seconds. Point 5 pro.
Many countries around the world have had strict regulations on gun control, and the results have shown how well gun control can help a country. Countries like Australia and Great Britain have made a very strong stand on guns, and after mass shootings in both countries, they've passed legislation to make buying guns much harder and, more importantly, much safer. As a result, gun deaths have dropped to more than half the level they were before in Australia, and in Great Britain, the amounts of deaths have almost dropped half as well. In Australia, the gun-related deaths per year were around 500 before gun control laws were passed, and in Great Britain it was around 300. These numbers are minute compared to the 30,000 plus people killed by guns each year in the United States. If Britain and Australia had so few gun deaths but were still wary enough about guns to create laws making stricter gun control, then it's just common sense that the United States should have stricter gun control as well. Australia's gun control policy has actually been so successful that since 1996, when legislation was passed to regulate the sale of guns, there has not been a single mass shooting. In Great Britain, only one mass shooting has occurred since stricter gun laws were passed. The United States, on the other hand, since 2010 has had over 30 mass shootings. It would be a wily move by the United States to perform stricter gun control based on how other countries have increased gun control successfully. Based on how other countries have seen increased gun control successfully lower gun violence. Despite how successful Australia and Great Britain have been at lowering gun violence, Japan has done the best job by far. Japan is known for its strict gun control, which has been in place for 50 years. With these regulations, Japan has only had 2 gun-related deaths in 2006, and only 11 in 2008. These numbers are even more astonishing paired with the fact that Japan is one of the most populated countries in the world. Evidence from other countries' experiences with gun control make it clear that improved gun control in the United States would positively affect the safety of the whole country.
2 minutes. Rebuttal.
So, the murder through the use of guns is about people, not the weapon. Guns, yes, are the medium for killing people, but the person has to make it up in their mind that they're going to do that. So it's a human nature, it's a insanity, it's an issue of more humans than the weapon itself. And making purchasing guns legal makes people who own them already criminals. So they're more likely to continue on with that criminal activity and do something later that's on the same track.
The difference between America and these countries you mentioned is that America is a melting pot country. We have different cultures and different levels of socioeconomics throughout our nation. Compared to a nation like Japan, which is one of the most homogenous nations in the world, we have cultures all over our nation that have different ideas, and a lot of times that can result in violence.
Okay, 1 minute. Final point, Con.
If the government regulated the sale and distribution of guns, only law-abiding citizens would be affected. Most people that participate in acts of terrorism do not obtain their weapons legally in the first place, and thus stricter control of the legal sale of guns will have no impact on them. The black market will continue to exist and people will continue to obtain weapons in an inconsequential manner. Source F explains that many people who sell guns are in it to make money and thus do not care enough to look into the history or mental health of their customer as long as they are being paid. Mass murderers are generally wily enough to figure out how to cut corners and get around the legal procedures that should be followed. It would be ridiculous to expect a terrorist or gang member to give up their weapons simply because new laws regulating such are put into effect. Additionally, if the government miraculously finds a way to prevent terrorists from obtaining weapons, they will not be suppressing the violent culture present in our nation. If these people do not have access to guns, they will simply find a different means by which they can harm others. The guns do not put the ideas into people's heads. It's their own inner thoughts and desires that set up the horrible situations that have occurred, as outlined in Source D. The majority of people that go through the correct procedure to obtain weapons are not intending to use them in a way that is unsafe and harmful to others. By making it harder to obtain a gun, the government is punishing the law-abiding citizens by inconveniencing them. This will cause more people to turn to finding guns in an illegal fashion, which again does not solve the problem at hand. Stricter gun control is simply not an effective way to prevent those who commit acts of terror from obtaining weapons.
1 minute, 31 seconds. Rebuttal.
I think that the argument about how like criminals break laws and like it would only harm law-abiding citizens, then like what's the point of having any laws if people are just going to break them anyway? Like what's the point of having a drinking age law if people are going to drink anyway? Or what's the point of having this law or that law? So I think you have to really start considering what you guys are arguing.
And we're saying that we're not trying to make a coup of illegal of firearms in general, but we can't have the government sit by and condone violence by making it so easy to have access to a gun. The gun show loophole, as to reiterate and make more clear, because I think we got confused in that, is we want to close this gun show loophole, and we don't want it to be so easy for private dealers to sell guns without a proper background check. And guns bought illegally by criminals, this can be regulated. Like if criminals in Australia, they just don't have access to guns because it's just not as easy to get one, and it's lowered the rates. We're not saying we're going to get rid of murder rates completely, that just doesn't seem feasible, but we know we can lower them, so why aren't we?
Okay. 1 minute. I'm going to give you guys